Hi. So this is about the whole LGBTQ plus thing. Actually, probably not the whole thing, because the longer I wait, the bigger it gets, and I can't keep up with it. And some things I have a hard time understanding. I guess it's because of how old I am. But also sometimes it's really hard to figure out certain things. So, I figured out a long time ago that it's okay to be homosexual or bisexual. Now, I'm using those terms because homosexual, as it originally is used, encompasses both men and women and, well, now other people who engage in sex with people of the same gender. So, nowadays they tend to say lesbians and gays, but, gay really is for women too. And it gets so complicated because the terms keep changing as people decide they want them to change for whatever reason, and I don't know why. So that whole thing was fine with me. It took a little bit of understanding because when I was a kid, I received some pressure from my mom in regards to that sort of stuff, and that it was, well, sinful, which is ironic because now she eventually became an agnostic. But anyways, but I got over that hurdle. And then trans. Well, I was like, okay, I've met some trans people. I've been friends with them, and there was nothing wrong with them. And I was like, okay, well, I don't really get why you want to change your body. Oh wait, I have a tattoo. Why ever would you want to change your body? Oh, I don't know. There are lots of different reasons that people want to, but I didn't really understand at that time why people felt a need to change their physical gender, male to female, female to male, or maybe both, I don't know. So that was cool. I figured that out in my 20s, I think it was, and then oh yeah, definitely the 20s, and then in my early 40s, I believe it was. Gosh, I'm so old. I started hearing about intersex and middle sex, and I was like, huh? What is that? And so I thought, okay, I'd better do some checking into this. And I discovered that there are a number of, I don't know if I should call them syndromes or what the scientific term is that would encompass all of them, but there are, let's say, biological conditions that occur in some people that cause them to be born in a category other than pure male or pure female. Oh, and speaking of pure, one might have a little bit of fun with the XX and XY thing and say, since women have two X's and men only have one, that means women are pure and men are mutts. That's my own joke. Sorry, I'm not copying anybody on that. I literally just thought of that while I was watching a video. But yes, and I'm not laughing because I'm making fun of what I just said. I'm laughing because it's just kind of funny to think how some people are going to react to the idea that women are purer than men. In other words, they're going to be blatant sexist trolls, and I'm just going to block you or ignore you or whatever if you are. So, probably just report you. Anyways, period. Let's go back to what I'm talking about. So then in the early 40s, I did start doing some digging into the intersex thing, and I discovered there are this list of biological things that cause you to be born with a mixed sex, or sorry, mixed gender, I should say. And that, I don't know, I assume it still happens in some places, but it used to be that in the U.S., doctors, with or without informed consent from the parents, would opt to alter the baby to conform with one of the two known genders. And so the doctor would look at the physical attributes of a baby. And, you know, when you look at a baby anything, it can be a little bit challenging sometimes to determine what gender somebody is or something is. Like, for example, look at a baby cat, a baby dog, or something else like that, or even worse, birds and fish. And you will find it extremely challenging to figure out what gender something is. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily the case with humans, but in the case of people who've been born with a biological situation whereby their genitalia are not entirely matching with what the doctor expects, the doctor has to make a random choice. I mean, it's not like the baby's born with breasts or a sign on their forehead saying, "I'm a girl." So the doctor will make a guess and adjust the baby's genitals. And then for however many years until either the child figures it out or the parents figure it out or the parents tell the child or whatever, the child is living under the wrong gender. And there have been cases where kids who were assigned by the doctor to be male, when they reached puberty, started menstruating and stuff like that. And that must have been really confusing. But anyway, so there's androgyny, and there's, and I know that they don't like this term these days, but there's hermaphrodites, and there are a number of other ones. And if you research it, you can find it for yourself. So I was like, wow, okay, so there are scientifically validated reasons why somebody would be born with a confusing physical situation, you know, down here and stuff, and that when they hit puberty, it'll even get more confusing. And wow, that has got to be rough. And I sympathized with these people. I still sympathize with them, especially if they had a doctor who redesigned them, so to speak. So that helped me to also understand why some trans people would have a legitimate reason for doing it. Because prior to that, I was kind of under the assumption that, and I apologize, that these trans people were doing it just because of psychological problems like body dysmorphia or some other situation wherein they just came to a misunderstanding about themselves, or something was broken mentally, and cringe, sorry. So it took me a while to wrap my head around it, but I did, and then I was okay with that. But then I came back to the U.S. Now, in Indonesia, it's a little bit more conservative than in the U.S. Although on mainstream media you will see gay performers. When I say gay performers, I don't mean sex performers. I mean that simply that they are overtly, behavior-wise, they're overtly gay. And you'll see people who don't fit the norm, I guess you could say, the expected behavior of a male or a female. And some of them get very, very famous, and often they are comedians. But you don't really see anything about transgender or queers or anything like that. So I came back to the U.S. anyways, and this was in 2017, and I started hearing about queers, and I was like, what is a queer? And I was so confused. I heard it seemed like queer had to do something with gender fluidity, and I was like, what? What? So, I was trying to educate myself. So I put a message up on my Facebook page and I asked if there's anybody who could explain to me what queer is. And a friend of mine who I've known for several years got her child on chat with me. And this person, who I don't know if they are queer or not, but seemed to know and understand, attempted to explain to stupid old me about it. And unfortunately, and I credit this person, whose name I will not give, but I credit this person for making the attempt to help me to understand, and I apologize for being unable to correctly interpret what you were saying. Unfortunately, despite your best intentions, the way you explained it was missing certain facts, and that's not your fault. So I said, so basically what you're saying is these people have mental issues. Cringe again. And the person said, no, that's not correct, but could not explain to me why this was a legitimate thing rather than mental illness. So I went from that point, and it was either 2017 or 2018. And then I finally, I believe it was very early this year, in 2021, I was watching a series about human behavioral biology by, and it's an old one, it's from 2010, 2011, by Professor Robert Sapolsky of Stanford University. And he goes through a whole bunch of stuff in the series. I've watched like 20 of the 26, I think it is, and I've learned a bunch. I mean, some of it I already knew, but I've learned a bunch. And one thing that finally helped me to understand queer was he was talking about research. I'm sorry, my eye is really itchy. He's been driving me nuts. He talked about Professor Sapolsky, or I don't know, probably doctor also, scientific research into gender and related topics, and what has been discovered. And this just knocked my socks off, but also it helped me to understand how queer can be a real thing. Now, I'm not going to try to explain it to you. But in more than a basic way, I should say. But basically, some people, because of... Now, hold on a second. I want to compose my thoughts before I say it. Right. So, the research was done looking at different parts of the body, trying to find correlations, trying to find evidence that would at least point in the direction of why some guys say they're girls, some girls say they're guys, and some say they're sometimes guys and girls. And so basically what came about is they discovered some things that were superficial, like some people might have certain fingers that are equal length, and that indicates something. And that's a very superficial thing. It doesn't show causality. It is correlative at best. But then they looked at the brain. And what they discovered is that guys who are gay have certain parts of their brains that are more similar, I think it was in size, to a girl's brain. I mean girl as in a heterosexual lady, than to a heterosexual guy's brain. And they found the same thing was true with lesbians, that their brain, certain parts were very similar in size to heterosexual males. And so on and so forth. So there were these indicators, I guess you could say. They didn't show why this was happening exactly, but and again, these videos are 10 years old. but they demonstrated that there's something going on in the brain whereby homosexual people, certain parts of the brain, are similar to that of the opposite gender, which would explain why some people prefer their own gender and they're born that way, and other people prefer the opposite gender, and other people prefer, well, they go back and forth as to what they prefer, or they go back and forth as to whether they feel male or female. So that, it's like, that kind of blew my mind, but in a good way. And it just kind of, for me at least, it allowed me to grasp how somebody could be queer. Now, when we talk about these things that cause people to be gay or to be born with the wrong physical gender or to be queer, you could argue, oh, these are normal or these are not normal, and you could look at statistics to see how often this happens. But in the end, it doesn't matter how often it happens, okay? And here's the reason why. Because there's only a small portion of the population that has these medical conditions, these biological conditions, doesn't mean it's irrelevant, and it doesn't mean that they should be ignored, or worse yet, ostracized for who they were born as, okay? You can't just go into the brain and scoop out the excess and make it match. It's not like changing a penis into a vagina or vice versa. It is not possible to alter a brain so that person stops being queer or homosexual, or bi for that matter. We can't do anything about it, and I'm not really sure that it's necessary to do something about it. What we do need to do is learn to be accepting. One thing that I've noticed is that some of the people who are the loudest about homosexuality are also the people who have secret feelings of homosexuality or bisexuality. They may look at people of their gender and they're like, ooh, oh my God, I can't believe I just thought that person was hot. So, oh my God, no, I'm not gay. I'm not homosexual. No. I am super straight. So, yeah. In fact, there was, I can't remember his name, I don't know if it was Falwell or who it was. There was a Christian leader who, for many years, reviled the homosexual community, but was secretly homosexual. And there are other people who've done the same things, politicians and religious leaders and other figures who have secretly been homosexual and blasted the homosexual community at the same time. I mean, how low can you go? And obviously these people were very, 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 very conflicted over their beliefs versus their interests, sexually speaking. So I can't talk about the plus. I can't talk about some of the more... Alright, I'm just going to say it. I can't talk about some of the more off-the-wall genders that I have heard about. I'm not even sure if they're real. But, it's... I've heard some weird things. And I just don't... I don't even know how to grasp that. And until I bother to look at it, I'm not going to talk about it, and I'm not going to damn it either, because I could, once again, be wrong. Now, the final thing that I want to talk about is something that used to bother me until today. So, what used to bother me is people using cis, the prefix, in reference to genders. So, and I found that irritating. And I guess the reason I found it irritating is I didn't understand what it was or why it was necessary. And I'm not entirely sure at this point that it will always be necessary, but I finally understand today, thanks to a video produced by H. Bomber Guy what it means. And so basically, if you think about it this way, okay, people who are normal gender, who have not had surgery and hormone replacement therapy and all that stuff, those people are called transgender, right? So cisgender, cis is the opposite of trans. Cis simply means that you have not elected to have gender reassignment surgery, or whatever the term is that they use for that kind of surgery these days. You have not gone through the process. Okay, so it's not meant to be offensive. I believe that people came up with, I don't know where that term comes from, but I believe that people came up with the term cis, or the prefix cis, I should say, in order to draw attention to, or to make it not draw attention, but to make it clearer when they were referring to trans people and when they were referring to non-trans people. That's my guess. I'm happy to hear from people who might have more information on that, or on queer, or anything else. I'm even willing to make a new video to try and further elaborate. I don't think I've convinced anybody. I'm sure that people are going to have to go through their own process of discovery. So, and those of you who are self-haters because you do have tendencies toward bisexuality or homosexuality, pansexuality, gender fluidity, being queer and all that other stuff, but haven't accepted it, especially if you're a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim, which are very, very negative towards those sort of things. I feel sorry for you. I hope you can resolve the conflicts that have been produced by your religion. And I would offer you this. And I don't think this is necessarily going to help very many people, but once upon a time I had a religion conflict. And I felt very strongly that I had to resolve it. I grew up in a Christian family, but I had doubts. And so my Christian upbringing was conflicting with these doubts that I had. And then one day, somebody, and this was in a special seminar that I was taking, or workshop that I was taking part in, the person said to me, "Hold up your hands. And in your right hand, I want you to put one of the biggest, the biggest challenge that you are facing." And I'm going to paraphrase the situation, okay? And in the other hand, I want you to put something else, some other challenge that you're facing that's not as pressing. And so, for the sake of time here, the person eventually said to me, "Okay, now I want you to look," we went through this process of trying to clear my mind of confusing emotions and stuff, which surprisingly is helpful, and involves you, basically you give each emotion that you're feeling to the person who's helping you go through this process. You kind of loan it out to them, and they hold on to it for you until you're done, so that you can just kind of peel away these emotions temporarily, so that you can be more focused on the problem you're facing rather than the emotions that are triggered by the problem. And at the end of him getting to the point where I was no longer emotional about what this problem was, this religion problem was, and I didn't tell him what it was about. They never ask you that. The person asked, "Okay, can you just accept it? Can you just let it go?" And I thought about it, and without the emotions messing up my brain, my logical brain, I was able to realize that yes, I didn't need to have all the answers, and I could just accept the situation. So I did. And that was such a relief, because I'll tell you what, that struggle with religion, that it dominated my life for like 3 decades. And it was one of the triggers that caused me to have chronic depression. So being able to move past that question was, for me, was very enormous. And similarly, you might be able to do something like that so that you can move forward with your life without doubt, without hate, with full acceptance of who you are. And I know some people are not going to like me saying that. And I would just suggest to you that maybe you need to learn to be more tolerant of differences, and maybe consider whether the message of unconditional love by Jesus and acceptance is more important than certain other messages that are given in your holy book. Or if it's not Jesus, well, it may be somebody else, but please consider which is more important to you. Love, understanding and tolerance, or hate, not accepting, and not being intolerant? Do you want a better world, or do you want a worse one? Thank you very much for listening, and to all the members of the LGBTQ plus community, I apologize if I ever made you feel uncomfortable or unhappy, or because I have actually completely unintentionally said things that people misinterpreted from that community that made them angry at me. And some of them would, ban me on Facebook and stuff, people that were friends of mine and stuff. And they wouldn't listen to me when I tried to explain, no, that's not what I'm saying. So if you're one of those people, I'm sorry you misunderstood what I was actually saying. And I'm sorry that sometimes I am unable to say things in a way that people aren't triggered. Maybe you should work on not being triggered. That's what I'm doing, working on not being triggered by things. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.